Hi, everybody. My name is Barb McQuarrie, and I'm the Community Director at the Center for Research and Education on Violence Against Women and Children at Western University. On behalf of the Neighbors, Friends, and Families team, I want to thank you for joining this Community Talks event, where we'll be meeting and speaking with the author and illustrator of The Outside Circle. Please think about the traditional lands that you're currently situated on and join us in acknowledging and thanking the generations of Indigenous people who have cared for these lands and in celebrating the continued strength and spirit of the Indigenous peoples of Canada. I'm speaking to you from the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lenape-Wak, and Attawandaron peoples' traditional lands. The ongoing work to make the promise of truth and reconciliation real in our communities, and in particular to bring justice for murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls across the country, should inform our discussions in this community talk and beyond. Today's event will be an hour and a half long, starting with a 15-minute presentation by the illustrator Kelly Mellings and the Senator Patti LaBoucane-Benson. Following, we will have a moderated Q&A by Chet Monag, our Indigenous Program Coordinator in the Faculty of Education at Western. Please use the Q&A button at the bottom to type in your questions. This community talk is recorded and will be posted on our Neighbors, Friends, and Families website and shared via email within a few days. So I'm really happy to introduce you briefly to our speakers. Senator Patti LaBoucane-Benson is a Métis woman and the Director of Research, Training, and Communication at Native Counseling Services of Alberta. She has a PhD in human ecology focusing on Aboriginal family resilience. Her doctoral research explored how providing historic trauma healing programs for Aboriginal offenders builds resilience in Aboriginal families and communities. She's also been the recipient of the Aboriginal Role Model of Alberta Award for Education. She lives in Alberta. Kelly Mellings is an award-winning art director, illustrator, and designer. His work has appeared in comic books, magazines, apps, museum exhibits, and online games, and his clients include Microsoft. He is the co-owner of the acclaimed illustration, animation, and design firm Pulp Studios. He lives in Alberta.
Hello. Thank you so much for that wonderful way to start things off in a good way, Myrna. That was fantastic. I'm Kelly Mellings, the illustrator of The Outside Circle. It was my honor and pleasure to work with Senator Patti LaBoucane-Benson to bring her research and story to life. And I'm going to share a small presentation that I have on a little bit about how I chose the style in which to represent the book, and a little bit about the journey and learning that I had to undergo before I did that, and a small section on the actual process of taking Patti's script and turning it into the comic pages that are in the graphic novel. So I'm just going to share my presentation. Just give me 1 second. All right. So when I illustrated The Outside Circle, one of my biggest concerns was the style. How am I going to illustrate such an important story? There's a million different ways to draw something, and style can help the intention of the author, or it can work against it. And so a simple demonstration of that is just showing two different fonts. They say exactly the same thing, but when you have one that is in a beautiful flowery script, it's going to say it in a different way than something that's kind of in a scary script. I personally would hope someone would give me the top one, not the bottom one. This is how I would illustrate something if I had all the time in the world and just could play around and paint. It would take me forever. I wouldn't have been able to do a graphic novel completely in this, at least within a reasonable amount of time. And it may not have been the best way to represent things. This is also a style that I illustrate in. This was done to educate young kids, create some games around engineering. So there's a huge difference between something like this and something like this. This is also a style that I could work in, a kind of an all ages, almost adventure timey illustration style. My business partner and I do a lot of kind of comic books style work in this. Because of the nature of the outside circle, this would not have been appropriate. Again, just a couple different styles. This one here was some text illustrations that told stories within the illustration of homeless people. This is an illustration paradigm, and this is from Scott McCloud's book, Understanding Comics. And basically, it looks super complicated, but at the top, you've got a simple picture plane. So just really simple circles, squares. You get abstract, the closer to the top that you get. To the bottom left, you have reality, where you have like almost photographs or photorealistic type of work. And the bottom right, you get simpler. You get more kind of iconic, you're kind of like cartoony comics that you're used to, or characters that you're used to, like Mickey Mouse and Tintin. Those types of illustrations are on the bottom right. Those are great, and they're easier to put yourself into the place of. But oftentimes, illustration that's in that style seems aimed at a younger audience. And some people will dismiss styles that are in that area of the paradigm. So I knew that we wanted to be down near the realistic end of things. So here are three different Indigenous lead characters that I illustrated for some educational comics that I'd done. And they were aimed at three different demographics. They're all young Indigenous boys, but they're all done in very different styles. On the left, we have almost a manga style. In the middle, we have kind of more traditional kind of comic-y style. And and on the right-hand side, we have more kind of like leaning towards a realistic style. And I knew that that's where we wanted to land for the outside circle. One of the biggest reasons was that this would be a lot of people's first graphic novel, and I wanted them to be pulled into it right away. So something that feels more realistic, feels like there's more effort, even though it might not be more effort. And it feels closer to other media that they've seen, like movies and TV and things like that. And so that's how I ended up with the style for the outside circle. I also worked closely with the colorist, John Rausch, who's worked for Marvel, and with Robert Kirkman, who does The Walking Dead. He worked on his other book, the Invincible comic book. And I worked with him to get a realistic kind of look to the lighting and shading, and make sure that things kind of had that same kind of tone and feel that we wanted. So that was how I decided on the style of the book. For the actual learning that I had to do before I illustrated anything, before we even put pen to paper, I'd worked with Patti quite a bit through Native Counseling Services and creating educational and community resources for that. But she knew that I needed to do some education. And before we even started the book, we I participated in a sweat, and we asked the elder that led the sweat to help us start the book off in a good way. And we offered her proper protocol and tried to start things off on a good foot there. So that was kind of the start of my education. I also flew up north to Clecho and with a community and the youth within the community, and we helped create some posters that helped educate about lateral violence. Things like gossip can be really harmful in small communities. And so I got to spend some time with these amazing kids, and they were filming a documentary, so they were actors as well, and had some fun with them. And part of that as well was we got to watch elders pass down traditional knowledge, and they filmed that as well. And I got to kind of see that firsthand. So this is the coldest I've ever been. Even right now in Alberta, it's like minus 40 something with wind chill. This felt colder. And we were out on the ice way up north, and this elder was teaching this youth just how to ice fish and how to do that properly. So that was really an amazing experience there, just to see that passed down. We also spent some time with an elder, and she was making moose nose soup here, and it was super cool. She had all sorts of dried meats inside, and it was just an amazing experience to spend time and just kind of observe just these kids learning the amazing traditional information. And then another big thing that informed the book, and I would not have been able to illustrate it in a good way had I not, is I went on a tour of a residential school with a group of survivors. And there were elders within the survivors, but they were quite young people, my parents' age and younger, that had gone through the school and experienced things. And so we went through the whole tour. Right now, the school is a university, and it's been reclaimed in a lot of positive ways. But even going in there now, it still felt off. And I couldn't imagine being a young child, taken away from their family and being put into here. And all of the elders shared their stories. And they took us to rooms and described the things that had happened. They talked about their friends, what had happened. And it's one of the biggest life-changing experience I had ever had. And it took me a few days to decompress after that. And my business partner was there with me because he worked on a video that tells the story of the younger brother from the outside circle, Joey. He went with me, and both of us took some time to decompress after, because a lot of these stories, a lot of this history seems like it's way in the past. And talking with survivors really brought to reality or brought home how recent it was and how real it was. And I had just had my first daughter at that time, and they were describing how they were treated, and they were about her age, and it was pretty amazing and heartbreaking. This to illustrate some of the proper protocol, I spent time with an elder who ran the Warrior program. And so she just shared with me the tools that they have there. Each elder and teacher's group of tools is different and unique and very important and sacred. So this will be different from some people's, but this is the reference that she gave me. There are things there that are not considered traditional, like the TV remote, and that's not to be irreverent or anything like that. But in the courses, the Warrior program, a lot of their learning, they have video resources, and that was a big teaching tool for them. So that's why that's something like that is included with these sacred items. This is the elder. If you've read the book, she looks familiar. So we have a character that's based off of her. It's not her, but we wanted to honor her, and we asked her if we could use her likeness. And this is Victoria, and in real life, she ran the Warrior program, and she reminded me very much of my grandmother, just a very strong, bright lady who helped turn these men, as Patti says, from men of stone to men of grace. And you can see how that change happens when you have people that are this dedicated and strong leading them. Now, without those experiences, I wouldn't have illustrated a comic book page in this way. So had I not had those experiences, I probably just would have drawn straightforwardly whatever Patti had written down on the page. But because of the stories of the survivors and meeting the elders and all of those things, I could empathize and understand how that moment would feel. And instead of showing it within a grid like you would normally in a comic, showing it within these panels that are created by the tears of Pete's uncle, I think helped drive this moment home when him and his brothers and sisters were taken away from their family. Now, this blurry page is a picture of the script. So now I'm just getting into my process, taking Patti's amazing script and turning it into something that's a graphic novel. So I would get a page of script. It would be not as blurry as this, but depending on how much sleep I'd had, it might look a little bit like this and I'd have to squint. But basically all the information is there. Patti would describe each panel, how many panels there were, and what the dialogue was on the page. What was nice was that Patti would leave things open to me having a little bit of interpretation with it. So in this case here, we have one page that had 2 panels that I thought could be broken up into 2 pages with multiple panels. So there's quite a bit going on there. Now you see these little scribbly sketches that are there. Those are what I call my thumbnails. And so those thumbnails are just very small sketches of what the page will look like. For me as an artist, that's one of the hardest things to do in the comic is to create these thumbnails. And it's basically all the storytelling there. It's like the foundation of a house if you're building a house. It's the important stuff. It's something that most people won't see, but if those bones are strong there, then everything else that you build upon it will be good. So in this case, I broke the page down into 2 pages. I asked Patti if that was okay. Of course, I would never make any decision like this that affects the story without running it by Patti. Patti thought that that was a good use of the real estate of the pages there, and then I went forward and I cleaned up my sketches. So if you can see this one that says 60A here, you'll see it's the same as this top illustration there. The difference with it is that instead of, again, square grid, I have some of these flashback scenes. These small panels are now reflected or illustrated within the flames of the fire. And the reason why I did that is that it's a flashback, and to help separate it from the moment that's there, I would put it within the fire. It's also one of the first moments that our main character, Pete, is learning about his past or his family's history or his history and experiencing his culture. So I wanted it to be a special, almost magical moment as this elder Roy is telling the story to him. So putting it within the flames was, I felt, a better way of representing that. Now, if you look from this page here, then I would do, this is my cleaned up roughs, then I would do the pencils and inks. And so even though this is much prettier, it is almost essentially all the same elements that are there. On the top, we have a circle of people around the fire talking, the men. And then there again, they're talking. And then on the top right, we have the elder Roy being introduced by the other elder, who is based on Victoria. Again, there it is. And then on the bottom, we have Roy there behind the flames, and then the flames with the little images from the past within them. And there they are again represented. And then the last thing we would do is my colorist, John, would work on the colors to bring it all together. And with this moment, we said we wanted it to feel magical. We wanted it to feel special, him encountering or thinking about his past for the first time. And so that's why, you get those little sparks and that kind of almost, misty feeling from it. And then the last thing we do is we bring Patti's words back into it. And so in this case, you wanna bring the words to help bring your eye around the page. So you'll notice that the words themselves follow a curve or a flow to help bring your eye around the page so that you can it doesn't work against the storytelling. And then we have just on the left, another thumbnail where all the heavy lifting for me is done. And then it's just tedious work to draw it out to get to the right-hand side. If it was understandable enough for people to understand my roughs, that'd be where I could just say goodbye and be finished. But in this case, we had to draw a lot. Now, if you'll notice from the left to the right, the one thing that is changed is that the smoke in the bottom 2 panels now goes outside of the panel borders. So those panel borders are like your frames on the TV. And you want to usually keep all your information within those. But in this case, this is the first time that Pete is experiencing a smudge and experiencing his culture for the first time. So he's heard about it, and so we made that a special moment the first time he's hearing stories that talk about pre-contact. And so now he's sitting with a group of men, and they're going to smudge for the first time, and he's never done this before. And I know before my first smudge, I was nervous and I didn't know what was going on. And it is kind of like a magical, almost cleaning experience the first time. And I wanted to represent that with the art. So before this moment in the book, you'll notice that I don't break the panel borders, or they're not broken at all. And so this is a special moment. If I broke the panel borders every time with a hand sticking out or an arm, this wouldn't be so important. But once we get here, we know that something is different. You might not notice it right away, but you do feel, okay, wait, something's a little bit off here. And it's because that smoke is flowing outside of the border, and it kind of brings you into the story subconsciously, and maybe consciously if you notice things like that, if you're a visual person. Why is there a weird picture of me crouching down with other people? Well, I wanted to get that kind of verisimilitude with figures and people. So my images aren't tracings of anything, but they do reference real life lots of times. So I will take photos of myself leaning around a piece of paper and then use that as reference for how someone might rest their hand when they're standing around a fire. This is Carl, who worked at Native Counseling Services, awesome guy, and he posed. This is actually in the center where the men who go through the warrior program would be going. So if you are a man in Edmonton and you went through the same program, you would recognize these locations. All the locations, all the stuff is built off of real locations here in Edmonton. Same thing with here, right outside of the Stan Daniels Healing Center. We've reflected that in the book. So if you have gone to the Stan Daniels, that's how it is, right down to the flags that are hanging outside there. And in this case, that's Dr. LaBoucane-Benson, who sometimes will be outside there having a cigarette and will greet the new men that come in to partake in the program. And that's mostly the journey that I had to take from someone who had very little understanding and experience with First Nations culture and zero experience with any ceremony or smudging or anything like that. And to come into a place where I could illustrate this from an honest and respectful position and try and do justice to Senator Patti's story that is, as you've read, so important and so impactful.
Great, thank you, Kelly. Before we hand it over to Senator Patti, I would just like to follow up on your presentation with a couple of questions and officially introduce myself to the panel here. My name is Chet Manag. I'm a member of the Chippewas of Bosley First Nation, also known as Chimnising, and here to help moderate some of those questions. So a few of our participants submitted questions beforehand, and I've had the pleasure to read through those and select some for moving forward. So I guess we'll start really simple before Senator Patti comes back on. And Kelly, I was curious, and we were curious, what's your favorite graphic shown in the novel, and what is the meaning behind it?
There we go, unmuted. So it's hard to pick. There's quite a few moments that are important. I think one of the ones that really resonates, I've got a couple bookmarked here, hopefully that's okay. One of the ones that resonates with me is this page here where we have, he's getting his gang tattoo, he's joining this gang, and from the tattoo, all this colonial legislation that's kind of led to him having made these choices are bleeding out of the tattoo. And when I talked to Patti, this was something that she'd wanted. We thought maybe it could be just a tattoo on there. And then I talked about maybe making it blood, and she seemed like that was a good idea. And then this page, I think, from a visual impact point of view and from a teaching standpoint point of view, being able to pull this page out and talk about these different legislations that led to that, I think this is one of the most impactful pages for me, and one where I learned quite a bit, but also I think it came together just from her initial description of things. Another page that resonated, or that I still am very proud of, is these two pages here where Pete first encounters his culture, and I first break those panel borders. Having both of these pages here, and we introduce some of these warm tones And you'll also notice that earlier on in the book, until he makes a good decision, all of the panel borders are black. And so until he makes a good decision. And so this page here, it's in that area where he's finally decided that he's going to go to the warrior program. So our panel borders are white. We've got these warm colors, and then we break the panels with this kind of mystical kind of smoke. I'm really happy with how this turned out, and I feel like the feeling that we wanted it to come across really works. And then lastly, I think this page, which I think we were going to have included on another panel, and then we decided to pull out into 2 pages, actually 1 page, and then we had some more room. So I said, can I make a page where it's just isolated by itself on the black? And so this is when he's going through a sweat, and it is a really emotional experience. And had I not participated in one, I wouldn't understand. And like, well, you're just, it's like you're just sweating. What does it mean? But when you're isolated in there and with the drums, and you're thinking about these things, in this moment here, he's cleansing himself. And this is like one of the first times that his bear spirit appears above him there. And I feel like this had the impact that we wanted it to. You flip the page and you get a page of black. He's just almost alone by himself in the sweat, and he's kind of screaming out. I felt like those were the most impactful from a teaching and educational standpoint, and also from a visual, just pure illustration level.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that you mentioned the background border, because even when I was going through the content myself, I didn't actually realize that there was a switch between the two. And knowing that when it's that lighter border, it's a good and positive decision, actually helps add more to the story, especially for myself. When I was going through the story and actually experiencing some of these depictions of smudging, and it was a good reminder for myself that I have those medicines and I can still participate in that, and especially in this time of COVID and sort of surrounding or isolating ourselves from other people and other socialization. So it's a really good reminder that we have those medicines in our back pocket. I do have another question here for you. And it has to do with the purpose of the mask that was seen throughout the novel, and how the mask ended up being broken. And I'm going to hold up my book as well here. And I was just wondering if you can speak to that a little bit as well.
For sure. So the mask was something that Patti wanted to include in the book. Part of the warrior program, in the book that's depicted there, where they make those masks and they depict who they really are and who they thought they were. That's actually an exercise that they do in the warrior program. So I think that's where it was, the idea came up. And then the idea of those masks that we wear, the mask that he thinks is who he is, this tough guy mask. So if you notice, early on, it appears subtly. So in things like the car reflection, when he's put on the car by the police, you'll see that mask in the reflection of the car as well. And then when he's yelling at his girlfriend, and this is that mask, it's not really who he is. And in the tiers of the mask, there's the TW for the tribal warriors that's in there. And again, all these things, I had about a page or 2 pages of different designs for the mask, and Patti went through and helped us kind of hone it down to something that she felt was representative of Pete before. And so then that mask comes up every time he gives into his anger, every time that he is I guess, not being true to himself. And then when he first realizes that his gang, the tribal warriors, is not out for him or there for him, when he's on the phone, that's when that mask breaks. And that's when it kind of shatters. So just the shattering of that identity, I guess, of who he thought he was. And then building up that new one, right, with the bear. That's an important moment as well. So I hope that answered a little bit. Patti was the idea behind it and guided what it looked like. And then I tried to put it in areas. She would describe where it needed to be sometimes, and then sometimes I would be able to kind of like subtly put it in or have it in there. So like when he's puking after the after the sweat, and he's kind of purifying himself. He's getting rid of this negative stuff in the ground. It's kind of leaking, and it creates a mask in that in the ground there. So it's almost like he's getting rid of that negative mask that he has. So on this page here, you can kind of see, if you turn it, where is it? It's hard to see. Oh, there it is. So there's the W, there's an eye, nose, and mouth. So it's in there. So he's like getting rid of that mask.
Wonderful, thank you. Now, I was curious about your journey and your preparedness as well, because you mentioned through your presentation a couple of times that you did a lot of work to prepare yourself to bring the imagery here to life. What advice would you have as a non-Indigenous person to others who are starting this journey of learning about Indigenous culture, and where would you recommend that they start?
There's lots of different places you can start. I've been fortunate in that all of my learning has been through relationships and building relationships with either elders or knowledge keepers in the community, or people that have wanted to help educate me. And I think one of the biggest things for me that I've had to do, and that anyone that wants to start on this journey, is to unpack whatever their preconceived notions of things are, and of whatever things are, and however open-minded you think you are, you have these prejudices, and you have these ideas of things, and that's not how they are. So just being willing to change your opinion of things, being willing to learn and to reach out and build relationships. Those have been the things that have helped me the most. And I'm still learning every day, but these experiences that working on the book and working with all the people that helped guide me to be able to do a good job on the book, like those have really helped me move along where I needed to be.
Wonderful, thank you. And we do have a question in our question and answer. So thank you for our attendee who submitted that. Can you also speak to the symbolism of the text bubbles encased in red?
Sure. Those were just to help emphasize the anger and the emotion that was behind them. I'm not sure if we had anything too much more than that. It was just to really kind of bring home some of those emotional, impactful moments.
Wonderful, thank you. And we do have another question from Natalia. Can you share with us about how this project impacts your career?
I think it's impacted it. It's been the most widely seen and widely recognized piece of work that I've been a part of. It was a very long time working on it, and it was a very emotional and hard process just from a learning standpoint. Also, personally, when I was drawing the scene of Pete's mother dying, my own brother had just committed suicide. So a lot of the themes in the book really hit home to me at very kind of emotional times. So it was very, very hard at the beginning, but it's the most rewarding in terms of engagement, people reading it. And for it to be, it was released 5 years ago, and we're talking about it right now. And I'm able to take it and to give it to people who maybe want to start that journey or understanding about Indigenous culture and why we are where we are today, and they don't have anywhere to start. I can hand this to them, and it's like 20 years of Patti's research, and I can just pass it to them. And since this, I've had the opportunity to work on more graphic novels, so that's opened things up there, and of course more work with Indigenous communities and doing different projects there, and that's always been a huge just blessing on my part. For a while, I was concerned that being non-First Nation and illustrating such an important book like this, that I was out of place or taking something away from an Indigenous person. But I talked to Patti and I talked to a few other people, and I think this is a role that I can play in reconciliation. Is I'm learning and I can talk to other settler Canadians about my role in this and how my journey of learning. And as long as I go forward in a good way on projects and collaborate always with experts and elders when it is a project that involves First Nations, and never putting myself first and always the project first. I think, yeah. Sorry that's a long explanation, but it's the biggest life-changing piece of work that I've done, and in my career it's the same way. And if I'm known for one thing, I'm so proud to be part of this book that's such an important and just an amazing conversation starter for where we are today.
That was wonderful. Thank you. I really like how you phrase that as well, and how that the work that you did for yourself and the work that you did for the book and the project itself is so much more. It is a journey. It is a journey of understanding, and it's a journey of learning. And that's why we're all here today. We're all here to participate in that journey together and have that open discussion about Indigenous Canada and some of the issues that are faced by the Indigenous population here as well. I am just going to have another really quick look here for a question for you. Some of the imagery and some of the teachings that I have been given with regards to ceremonial items, as you've mentioned in your presentation. In my background, we're not supposed to depict those, or we're not supposed to photograph those. And how did you take it upon yourself to show the significance of these items throughout the novel with still maintaining that protocol?
Well, I think with that we consulted, and I know Patti consulted with several of the elders that ran the different programs. And I think the consensus that we had was that they would let me know what to illustrate and which parts, and we did send everything by them for review to make sure that things were done in an honest way, and that came from a good place. And so I think that's in this case they were very specific items and protocol that were used, and it's not as like a generalized this is what's used kind of scenario. So I think that's where we came with it from. I think Patti can speak probably a little bit more to that when she's here, but yeah, that's from my perspective. I just wanted to make sure that the people that were involved were happy with how I represented things. And then we tried to make those important items not the center of any of the imagery, and have them just being there. And for men who experienced the program and went through the program, for them to see it and be like, yeah, that's how it is. That's really how it is. I think when you're pulled out of a story because you're looking at something, like if you're watching a show and you're like, well, they wouldn't do that, or that's not how it is. And in this case, we wanted that verisimilitude to be in every minute, be like, okay, well, that's how a sweat is. That's how you would smudge. This is how the center looks like, all that stuff. They wanted it to be as true as possible.
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I think without the representation throughout the graphic novel, it wouldn't hit home the same way that it does, and we wouldn't be on that same spiritual journey as Pete without it. I was curious, and you've mentioned a lot of your work opportunities that have come of this, and you do have other works that you've mentioned in shows and galleries. Where would somebody who is interested be able to follow your works or gather some more information on some of the works that you've done?
For I'm pretty bad with social media and stuff like that. My business partner's way better, but Pulp Studios is probably where you can find most of that. And then if there's anything kind of personal, it'll be on at Kelly Mellings on Twitter. I like making art better than talking about it, and I usually don't think that I have too much to say other than my illustration. So I'm not too vocal on any platform, but yeah, that's where you can find me, at Kelly Mellings or at Pulp Studios. And Pulp Studios is more my commercial work, so a lot of stuff for clients, and we do stuff with Indigenous clients and collaborators. Yeah, most of my personal stuff will be on at Kelly Mellings.
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah, that is all the questions that I currently have for you right now, Kelly. Thank you for sharing.
No problem.
I really appreciate that. And another reminder for our participants who are still here that you do have the opportunity to ask your questions in the question and answer button, just located down at the bottom of the page. If you do have a similar question to another participant, you're able to what's called upvote those questions so that I can see them at the top of the question list there as well. I'm going to go through another question that we've had submitted from our pre-meeting here. One moment. So this question comes from one of our participants previously. In her book, A Mind Spread Out on the Ground, Alicia Elliott says that intergenerational love can heal intergenerational trauma. Do you think the outside circle shows how this can happen?
In my opinion, I think it does. I think that connection with family. I think Pete has the beginnings of it with his small little unit, but he doesn't have any of the tools that he ends up getting through the Warrior program. And I think that really helps him. But yeah, I think there are some really strong examples of that. And there are examples definitely of how that trauma affects you without even knowing about it. And then, that strength and resilience of family being able to heal it. I think it's pretty strong there. I think for me, I think that as strong as family is, those other supports help and can help that healing occur in a faster time frame. When you have a trauma that is so huge and separates you from your identity and your past and your language, it's going to take a long time without other supports there. So, yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah, I agree. I know that the trauma that was faced by Indigenous Canada is long lasting, but I agree with that thesis that intergenerational love can also assist in helping that as well. And
for sure.
If given the opportunity, now this is just my question, if given the opportunity, would you be interested in a project like that?
Like a project that talks about like intergenerational love healing.
Definitely.
Oh yeah. I think that's a message that people need to see. And I mean, it's out there right now. There are so many Indigenous success stories that people don't hear about, and those are results of that love and a result of that hard work and resilience finally seeing fruition. So yeah, if there were opportunities to be part of something like that, that would be amazing.
I would like to see more of your work personally. Just reading through the graphic novel and knowing that you do have that business, it's really exciting. While we wait for the senator, would we be able to play the video of Joey?
Yeah, we can do that. Is that on your guys' end?
Yes.
Okay.
Wonderful.
There is I see a question about for an artist here. Can I answer that before we throw the video on?
Definitely, take it away. Sorry, I didn't see the question.
No, no worries. It just popped up here. So, so as a professional, is there any recommendation that I would give to artists for their careers based on my experience? For me, is to practice your craft. It's a kind of layered. Practice your craft. Get as good as you can at whatever it is that you want to be doing, whether it's illustration or animation or design, and then find projects that are important to you on not just on a commercial level, but on a personal level, because those are the projects that are going to mean something later on. And so even though it might not seem like that's where you want to go, you just want to go for whatever fancy Microsoft or whatever, those are great. But if you can find something that hits those creative buttons and maybe has a little bit of pay, but then has a bigger meaning to you and the community, those are the projects that are going to live on like this, where it lives on for 5 years after we're still talking about it, or where it lives on with you as a project that you're very proud to be part of, and that regardless if people are reading it, that's something that you can still hold up as like, this was something that, yeah, was fun to work on, but it means something to me and to the people who worked on it and people who read it. So find work that's meaningful and get good at your work. And then hopefully it comes. Right now, there's so many resources for illustrators and artists out there. Whatever you want to kind of push towards, you can Google, and there's like Skillshare classes and online tutorials and whatever. So it's a good time to want to pursue that. And there's lots of opportunities for different fields in the arts right now too, with animation and video games and all sorts of stuff.
Wonderful, thank you for that. I'm just gonna hand it over to our techs here to upload the video, and we can all participate in a short watch.
Awesome.
I can give you my name, but the gang sign says it all. I'm a part of the tribal warrior gang. Oh, and just because I'm 13, that don't mean I don't know what life is really like. Everyone is out to get you. I take what I want to survive before someone tries to take something from me. That's how it is. That's the truth of where I'm from. It was total bull. I was arrested and charged with theft from a vehicle. But because of my long rap sheet, they were thinking of locking me up in the Young Offenders Center. I thought I was a goner for sure. But then the cop who busted me walked in and told the judge some sappy story about how I was a good kid at heart, but I was at risk. He said he had seen that I was getting close with the gang, but to still give me a chance. He told the judge that I'd be a good candidate for extrajudicial sanctions, whatever that means. And if I followed through with the conditions, they wouldn't lock me up. Sweet deal, right? Man, was I wrong. Once I was arrested, the government put me in a group home. Hell, my own family didn't take me in, they decided they had more important things to do than actually give a crap about me. After a few months, that same cop showed up with some guy named Alex from this native organization called Puna. Alex told me that Puna meant fire for the Cree and that the program had something to do with youth learning responsibility and their role in the family and community. The cop said the attendance of the Puna program was part of my extrajudicial sanction, and if I decided to do the program, Puna would find people who cared about me and get them involved in my life. Alex called it a circle of support. I called it a really bad Hallmark moment. The only support I wanted was from my brother Pete, but he was sitting in a jail cell. Oh, and these Puna meetings? More like phony meetings. I faked my way through them so the cop and judge would sign off. Then one day Alex tossed me some boxing gloves. Good thing too, because I was in the mood for a fight.
You're worthless! No wonder your dad left, or you're gonna cry just like your mother.
It's like I couldn't stop. My blood was on fire. I barely even remember what happened next. All I remember is Alex saying something about healing. Later in the program, we started doing this thing called Topway. I sat in a circle with 8 other gang kids who got busted and an old Indian cowboy.
There's a lot of pain and anger in this room, and it comes out through violence and rage. We need to find out where this pain comes from.
What did he want me to say? Hey, my mom's a crack addict and my dad's a deadbeat, my brother's in jail, and I was left to rot? Not the best way to say hi. One day in the program, the old Indian cowboy told us to draw our identity. That was easy. I knew mine was a tribal warrior. After my brother went to jail, they took care of me. But they haven't been around at all since I've been in here. Hell, they really are like my family. They disappeared the second I needed them. I don't need any of them. A couple weeks later in the Topway program, I had to draw my family tree, and it was pathetic. Looking down at my crummy piece of paper, I can see how effed my life was. You see on the left there? You can call her my mom. I like to call her a junkie. That's my brother Pete, who's in jail for murdering my stepdad. And my grandparents? I wouldn't know. Never even met him. The Indian cowboy looked at me and said,
Almost everyone in my generation went to residential school, and we all got messed up. This is how all the violence, the addictions, neglect, and abuse was passed on from one generation to the next. All this negativity passes down from your great-grandparents, to your grandparents, to your mother, then it was passed on to you. It's a cycle, but once you know this, you don't always have to wonder why no one cared. We can all break this cycle.
Everything moved so fast. I had no idea how I ended up in a sweat lodge. I never even bought a dream catcher, so why was I even in here?
Adults in your life have failed you. This can't define you for the rest of your life. The reason you are here is because your parents haven't been there for you. For whatever reasons, you need to forgive, to move on, to be healthy. In our Cree culture, a man is to protect our women and children. The children are at the center of the community, and the women put a circle around the children. And the elders form a circle around the women, and the men are the warriors. They are the last circle protecting the whole family. And one day, you will be the final circle, the warriors who protect and provide for your family. It is up to you to make changes in your life. Treat your elders, treat each other with respect, and treat yourself with respect.
Topway means the truth, and I spent 3 months looking for mine. I realized I couldn't find family in a gang, and there's no point in being angry with my parents. That was getting me nowhere. And I tried my best to leave that all behind. That cop and Alex said I was a good kid and that I had successfully completed the Puna program and my extrajudicial sanctions. They recommended that the judge drop my charge. The judge agreed. It was the first time I had someone fighting for me. The truth was, whether I liked it or not, I had a choice. I could follow my brother's path or create my own. I had always looked up to my brother, and I know he doesn't want me in here. I would never want to let him down either. I know how bad that hurts. That prison glass made things way clearer for the both of us. I got something he didn't get, a fighting chance. All it took was one person who saw I was worth something, then a whole community who chose to circle me, support me, and protect me.
Thank you for that. Just going to hand it over really quickly here to Barb for a couple of words.
Hi, everybody. I just want to let you know that the senator is actually in a Senate meeting and has a vote. And so she's been a little bit delayed. So we're hoping that we can continue to discuss the video with Kelly and with Chet, and that you can stay until the senator's available. Unforeseen complication, but I think it will really be worth waiting to hear her talk about the book.
Thank you, Barb. Really appreciate that. For everybody who's still here with us, if you do have questions, just a reminder that you can put your questions in the chat. You can put your questions in those question and answer boxes here. That was the first time that I had seen the video, and it is very moving as some of our participants are sharing in the chat function. The question here, yes, the session is being recorded. And it will be shared or posted, and our organizers will be able to send that out at the conclusion of our session. Based on the video and on the art that we've seen there, Kelly, were you also the lead artist for the video that we had just witnessed about Joey's story?
I art directed it, but my business partner, Corey, worked on all of that. So he did all the illustrations for that. And then we did the animation in-house. So yeah, that was a project that we did in conjunction with the Outside Circle. And it was kind of nice to show Joey, the younger brother, his story that wasn't really touched upon too much in the book. So that was a nice opportunity to kind of flesh that out a little bit there. And we didn't have time in the book, but we had that. And we've shown that to lots of youth. And again, too, is based off of real programs. It's kind of like the younger brother to the Warrior program.
Thank you. Yeah. I noticed that there was a little bit of a difference in the art style. So that's sort of where that question came from myself. How did you find the transition from hard copy to video with the art and still being true to the story that is here in the Outside Circle?
For sure. I think, again, the style we decided on was something that was that would mesh well with it, although not exactly the same. And it had to have more of that, again, that graphic, realistic feel to it. So again, it on that kind of like paradigm of art styles, it still lives in that kind of realistic realm. So it could kind of jump between the two. Lots of blacks, and then being able to bring a lot of those like earth tone and bright colors in for some of those important moments there. We also, with that one, it was a younger demographic. So we had a lot of younger kids that would be seeing that video. And so we kind of pulled in a little bit more of like a video game animatic kind of look and feel. So at the time there was games like Infamous and a few other games where you have these kind of cool cut scenes that are kind of like animated comic book, very graphic, heavy blacks. And so we kind of like referenced that a little bit when we were kind of deciding the look for this. So something that would mesh well with the graphic novel, but was its own thing. And then Corey referenced my character designs from the graphic novel. So, you know, a little bit different interpretation, but still kind of based off of the kind of proportions and hairstyles and all that stuff.
Wonderful, thank you. Now we do have some other questions that were submitted, and I think they'll tie in nicely with both the book as well as the video that we just saw. And one of the questions here is, what factors have contributed to a higher percentage of Indigenous peoples in the Canadian correctional system? And I'm wondering if you had to do a little bit of research on this when you were developing that and working with Senator Patti on the content of the novel.
Yeah, well, offhand, I'm not sure if I can say, like speak to it totally directly. We did have a page that we treated kind of infographic-y within the graphic novel. So this was a page where we wanted to show Joey, the younger brother, going from this kind of like sweet, almost Justin Bieber-y kind of, you know, just a sweet young dude to this kind of like, you know, walking on the streets, disenfranchised, angry young kid. So these are all his little moments in his life that lead up to that. But then these are statistics and facts that are laid outside of it that are also contributing factors. So these are kind of like your direct real life references, but these are the things that have caused that. So I mean, within that, you know, some of these factors that are here is 35% of Aboriginal children live with a single parent. And, you know, some of those factors are caused by other things like poverty. 40% of Aboriginal people in Edmonton live in poverty. There's racism, child welfare, unemployment. Aboriginal youth are twice as likely to be unemployed as non-Aboriginal youth. 27% of First Nation children living off reserves have mothers between the ages of 15 and 24. So all these factors, I think, contribute to, you know, a kid like this, who's this wonderful, perfect kid with all the potential in the world, becoming this, you know, angry young kid that has to survive on the street. So within here, Patti's got some statistics. And again, too, statistics don't speak to everything, but I mean, those statistics come as a direct result of these colonial legislations that have impacted First Nations Aboriginal society. Patti, in her presentation that she normally goes through, I think she speaks to that a little bit more. There's a huge disproportionate amount of First Nations people incarcerated, and you know, that's a lot is due or is correlated to where residential schools were. So if you look across the prairies, where you have the higher amount of residential schools, you're going to see a higher amount of incarcerated young men. And it's, again, a direct result of those legislations and that trauma that's been, you know, a result of the residential school.
Definitely. Wow, that's a really interesting statistic that I didn't even know about. And it sort of speaks to that trauma throughout time as well, and some of the things that Canada has done to sort of hide that dark history that we both have as well. One of the questions that I do have is, what would you say to a teacher who is hesitant to use the outside circle in their classroom due to the traumatic material contained in the story?
It's yeah, it's a good question. It's a challenge. I think with any teacher, you have to gauge your students. We've done lots of workshops with this book with teachers and with schools, and my daughter, who is 12, has read it, and I think most times Patti has spoken to the fact that if you're talking to kids, this is reality for a lot of children that are living the kind of life that Joey is in the book, that have family members that are incarcerated, that have people that have addiction within the family. So it is not easy subject matter. It's not something that should be just kind of like frivolously covered, but it is a reality for a lot of kids, and covering it in a truthful and honest way is one of the ways that I think we can help educate them and understand why a lot of people in the community are in those positions. So yeah, I would say gauge it, but just because it's tough, I think that's part of why it needs to be covered. But again, too, with certain things, if you understand that the person's going to be sensitive to it, then maybe that's I guess at the discretion of the teacher.
Definitely. And if we do have educators in our participants here today, that's a big reason why some of our roles within the school board exists itself. Within many school boards, there are First Nation, Métis, and Inuit education departments, as well as frontline service workers that work with your students and work in schools to help with that integration. And that can help with some of this content here and speak to the content of why it's important to bring to the classroom and speak to it in a really safe and positive way. Sorry, I just thought I'd add that as a little aside.
That's awesome.
Thank you. One last question for you, I think, before I hand it back to our organizers. And I'm just searching really quickly through our list here. Our question has to do with the imagery of nature that you can find here. Sorry, I'm just holding up my book really quickly, and I apologize if you can hear my dog in the background. But what was the transition from going from that very urbanite setting to the work that you had to do to bring this to life, to bring this aspect of the story to life?
Well, I think it's a real important aspect of the warrior journey and the warrior program. And so part of my education too is I sat in and met a lot of the warrior graduates. These were men who were serving very long sentences in like a regular prison, and then have gotten into the warrior program, and were men of very hard, tough dudes that were going through the program. And at the end, they were like Patti said, men of grace. And part of their journey is you're separated from your past and your culture, and you're in this very urban environment. And then I think a big part of that is saying, okay, now you're going to connect with nature. You're going to spend time out here, as much time as they are allowed to get them on the land. They do through the program. And in this case here, it was essential for Pete, and that's where he discovers what his spirit animal is, and he encounters that bear in the woods there. So it was a big moment for Pete, the character, but it's also a big moment within the whole warrior program and the journey of the men who go through that program.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kelly. I really appreciate your time, and we'll just hand it back here to Barb. We got you, everybody.
Thank you.
Well, I just want to thank you, Chet, for really facilitating the discussion. You brought a lot of your own knowledge and perspective to it. Kelly, it was an amazing experience. It was lovely to get some insights into your journey, and I think that you've modeled for us the kind of deep learning that we can engage in if we really want to be part of the process of reconciliation. So thanks for your work, but thanks especially for sharing it with us here today. Unfortunately, I don't think that Senator Patti is going to be able to get out of the Senate and the vote that she needs to be part of to join us here today. What we will try to do is to arrange a private session with her that we can record, where she talks about the book and shares what she was going to share with us today. And if we're able to do that, we will share that recording along with this one, so that you'll still be able to hear from her. So I just want to thank each and every one of you for joining us and being part of this on behalf of the Neighbors, Friends, and Families team. And I want to remind you that we have a lot going on the Neighbors, Friends, and Families website. So I've just put the link in the chat. Feel free to check it out. We have other events. There's lots of resources on there. So please stay in touch with us. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. And we will let you know when we have the recording ready. So goodbye and have a good evening.